Welcome to Unfiltered and Unstoppable with Romesburg. Real strategies for real advisors, a podcast that dives into what it takes to scale a thriving financial practice. Each week, we'll discuss actionable strategies, tools, and insights to keep you ahead in today's financial landscape. From innovative products and powerful marketing tactics, you'll get unfiltered truth and unstoppable strategies. Let's get started by building your unstoppable financial practice today.
All right. Let me ask you something right out of the gate here. When was the last time that your fact finding process actually changed the direction of a recommendation that you're about to make? Not just confirmed what you already thought, not just filled in the blanks on the form or within the CRM system, but truly made you stop and say, "Man, I actually would have gotten this wrong if I hadn't gone deeper here." Because if that's not happening consistently, we've got a problem. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unstoppable. I'm Rob Romesburg, and today we are going to be talking about something that most advisors think they're good at, but actually very few have mastered. It's all about your fact finding process, and I'll be blunt because that's what the show's all about, right? Being unfiltered. Most fact finding processes that I've seen over the 20 plus years of doing this, surface level at best, extremely transactional, and quite frankly, lead to very average recommendations. And guess what? When average recommendations are made, if there's a close, you're going to see average business. And guess what? That's not why you got into this profession. That's not why you did this. That's not why you worked all these hours to study and get your licensure and bought the office and hired the staff. So let's start with that uncomfortable truth then. Most are treating fact finders like a checklist. Not intentionally, not because you don't care, but quite simply because that's how the industry is trained us. So you've got your forms, you've got your CRM fields, you've got your required data points, and the meeting now starts to just feel like a process of completion. So you're just going through the motions, you're just going through the steps, you're you're, you're moving from one question to the next. What are your assets? What's your income? When do you want to retire? What's your risk tolerance? And clients answering, and you're typing, or and you're nodding, and you're writing the answers down. And guess what? On the surface, it definitely feels productive for sure. And it feels like progress. It feels like we're going somewhere. But let me go ahead and challenge that for a second here. Is it actually progress, or is it just motion? Because those questions, yeah, there's some important information there that you have to know for sure. But those are also just safe. It's safe. They're predictable. They're expected. Exactly what every other advisor's asking. And most importantly, they don't require you to think differently. And they don't require the client to go deeper. So here's what's happening in most fact finding meetings. Here's what's really happening. While you're trying to complete the file, that individual is just simply answering generic questions, therefore giving generic answers. They're giving clean, short, socially acceptable answers, but they're not expanding. They're not getting involved. They're not revealing anything. They're definitely not telling you anything that makes them uncomfortable. And so what you're ending up with at this point in time, it technically it's a complete profile technically, but it is a emotionally empty profile. There's nothing there really. There's nothing there to help you. And that could lead to a dangerous outcome. Because when it comes time to make the recommendation, you fill in the gaps, so you're assuming priorities. You're basically inferring or making up goals. You're projecting to what you think matters. And when that happens, the reality of that is the assumptions are the silent killer of great advice. So if you're assuming things that to where you have no foundation for that answer, it creates a dangerous scenario. So yeah, the original questions matter. You do need the numbers. You do need the timelines. You do need to understand structure. But if that's where your discovery is ending, you're not doing fact finding. You're just doing data collection. And those are not the same thing. So let me make this really clear. Data collection tells you what's true, sure. However, understanding tells you what matters. And if you don't know what matters, your recommendation, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how grand, no matter how wonderful you think it is going to absolutely miss the mark without a doubt. So you could have every account balance, you could have every income stream, you could have every expense category and still totally miss what the client's afraid of, what they're hoping for, what they regret, and ultimately what they value most. And if you're missing those things, you're not building a plan for their life. You're just building a plan for a spreadsheet. And guess what? Spreadsheets don't make decisions. Humans do. Humans do. So you've got to ask yourself the real question. Do I truly understand this client or do I just have their information? Because those are two totally different things. And my top advisors that I've worked with for so many years, they definitely don't confuse the two. So we've got to shift your mindset. We've got to think about your last few client meetings and really be honest with yourself here. How much of your fact finding was just focused on the numbers versus the meaning? Because once again, there's a difference, a huge one. The numbers are clean, they're organized, they fit neatly into your system. They're going to give you something to analyze for sure, something to model, something to present. And that's something we should gravitate towards because and I get it that the numbers kind of feel like you're in control and they feel like a certainty, but the meaning of it all, meaning is actually very messy. It's extremely messy. And guess what? It's not always clear and it's not always logical. And it doesn't fit into the fact finder necessarily. But once again, I got to make this so clear. Meaning is what drives, it's what's actually driving the decision. Your clients aren't sitting around thinking about their portfolio performance, their rate of return, standard deviation. Guess what? That's not how they experience their financial life. It's not how they experience life, period. They're really thinking is, can I retire without worrying? Will my spouse be okay if something happens to me? Can I help my kids without putting myself at risk? Am I going to run out of money? And here's the important part. They're not always saying those things directly. Sometimes it can come out sideways. Sometimes it could show up just as hesitation, skepticism, maybe, or just, hey, I want to think about it. And guess what? If your fact finding process is only focused on numbers, your I want to think about it is going to be quadruple everyone else's that's actually getting into the meaning, because you're going to miss those signals every single time. So the, the real world dynamic that you've experienced, you've presented a technically sound recommendation, you've checked every box. Hey, this is a very logical recommendation, it's well structured. And then that client says, yeah, this looks good, I'm just going to think about it. Once again, not a numbers problem. That's a meanings problem. And that means somewhere along the way, you didn't fully connect the recommendation to what they actually care about. So stop asking questions to complete a form. Got to start asking questions to uncover the story. Because guess what? Every prospect, every client has a story. We all have a story. The story is all about where they've been, what they've experienced, what they know, what they've learned about money, what their fear of losing, and what they truly want moving forward. So, the, the clear thing I'm trying to say here is your role is not just to gather inputs, not to just gather data. It's really to understand your prospects well enough to guide the next chapter. So instead of asking, what do you have? That's essentially what that is. Start asking, how did you get here? What shaped the way you think about money? What experiences have influenced the decisions that you make about money? Because when you understand that story, everything changes. All of a sudden, your recommendations are going to become extremely relevant. Your conversations are going to become more meaningful, and that prospect that's sitting in your office for the first time, they're going to feel something different. They're going to feel understood, and when a client feels understood, all of a sudden trust accelerates. Decisions become easier, and your value becomes undeniable. So, again, ask yourself, am I just collecting numbers or am I uncovering meaning? Because the advisors who separate themselves, they are the ones that are bringing in more assets in a shorter amount of time because they actually understand what's going on. And I get it. We pride ourselves on efficiency. You know, we covered everything and we got it done in 2 meetings. But did you learn anything meaningful? Because guess what? Speed's not the goal here. Clarity is the goal. So clarity is going to require follow-up questions, intentional pauses, silence. Yes, silence. The moment where the client leads in and says something deeper than they planned, that's where your real insight lives. You got to be asking better questions because if you want better answers, you need to have better questions. And I get it. That sounds simple, but honestly, it's the biggest gap that I see between those advisors that are struggling and those advisors that are doing really well. Y- I get it. You don't struggle with what to recommend. Like what I see is what the struggle is what to uncover before the recommendation is made. And really the quality of your recommendation is limited by the quality of your questions. So if your questions are surface level, your advice is going to be surface level. And you've got to really realize that. And let's upgrade a few of your questions, and more importantly, let's talk about why the upgrades of these questions matter. As an example, so instead of asking, when do you want to retire? Which, by the way, is always going to get you a number. 65, 62, 67. That's not insight, man. That's just a placeholder. Ask this instead. So, what does a great retirement actually look like for you? What do you think you're going to do on a daily basis after you retire? Then watch what happens. You're going to see a whole new world open up. You're going to see them all of a sudden start to describe how they want to spend their time, who they're going to be with, what freedom looks like, what they're excited about, and then maybe even what they're worried about. They're worried about losing. Now we're no longer planning for that just generic, boring date. We're actually planning for a life. So instead of asking, what's your risk tolerance? Which, by the way, no one fully understands anyway, especially someone that's just a prospect. And let's be honest, half the time that answer is, if they actually get it, is going to be influenced by whatever the market did last week. Ask this question instead. So, tell me about a time that you felt uncomfortable, but more importantly, uncomfortable with the financial decision. Now you're doing something different. You're tapping into real experiences, real emotions, emotional memories, behavioral patterns. You're learning from them what's actually triggering their fear, what creates doubt, what causes hesitation. Because risk tolerance is not really about volatility. I mean, that's part of it, but it's how someone experiences volatility, how they experience uncertainty. And guess what? You can't get that just from a scale of 1 to 10. Instead of asking, do you want to leave money to your kids? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Leaves a very shallow answer. Ask this. What role do you want your wealth to play in your family's future? So now we're going to get into values, intentions, impact, responsibility. All of a sudden, now you've uncovered, I've got a desire to create an opportunity for my son. Or, you know what, I've got a great fear of enabling dependency. Or, man, I just want to be fair. Or, I don't know, what is right? What should I do? And then all of a sudden now, this is no longer a financial decision. This is a purpose-driven decision. Hopefully, you're seeing a difference there. Hopefully, you feel a difference. That's not subtle. Once again, one set of questions is going to get you answers, clean and short and efficient, which we need those answers, sure. The other is going to get you insight, nuanced insight, emotional, actionable. And the insight is what's going to allow you to differentiate yourself, build deeper trust, deliver recommendations that actually stick, take away all the I think about it. The average advisor out there, and this is the bottom line to this, the average advisor out there is asking expected questions. The great advisor is asking intentional questions. So before your next meeting, don't get in there and just review the prospect's numbers, review your questions, refine them, upgrade them, make them harder to answer. Seriously, you make them think, not make them hard to answer or impossible to, but harder to answer. Because when your prospect has to think, that's when they start to reveal things. When they start to reveal, that's when you could start to do your best work. That's what it's all about. So I get it. Most advisors are gathering information, but not necessarily reflecting it back. And when you're not reflecting it back, the client doesn't feel understood. They don't feel heard. So make sure you are reassuring throughout the whole appointment. So, Jim, just to let me make sure I'm getting this right. So, Mary, it sounds like what matters most is okay. So what I'm hearing here, Bill, is what we're doing is we're building trust faster. We're ensuring accuracy. And all of a sudden, now your recommendation isn't going to feel like a pitch. It doesn't feel like you're closing them. It feels totally obvious. Like, this is why you're doing this. This is why I'm doing this. So the elephant in the room is obviously money is emotional. But we could try to systematize it. We could try to quantify it. We could try to make it just logical. But at the end of the day, every financial decision is tied to a feeling. And this becomes especially more true if you're working with retirees or pre-retirees. Because it's not just a financial transition, it's a life transition. They're no longer just asking, do I have enough? They're asking, who am I without my career? Am I safe? Have I done enough? What happens next? Did I work long enough? So, yeah, that they're thinking about identity, security, legacy, uncertainty, but many advisors miss something much more critical. They're focusing on goals when they should be uncovering values. So let me explain the difference to you. Goals are what people say they want to achieve. Values are why those goals matter in the first place. That's what it's all about. So, yeah, your client might say, "Hey, I want to retire at age 65." That's a goal. But why do you want to retire at age 65? Is it because of freedom? Is it because of burnout? Is it because of your health? Is it because you want to spend more time with family? And another client might say something along the lines of, "Hey, I want to leave money to my kids." Again, that's awesome. That's a great goal. But what they're really saying underneath that statement, it's because of love, because of responsibility, maybe even control, fear of them struggling. So if you're only planning around goals, once again, your recommendations could be technically correct, but the problem is that they're emotionally disconnected. Because when you understand values, your recommendations now become personally meaningful. And here's the key: values drive decisions far more than goals ever will, especially in moments of uncertainty. Because when market shifts and life changes and fear shows up, guess what? They're not going to fall back on their goals. They're going to fall back on their values. So, one of the primary responsibilities in your fact finding process is to uncover values. And that's going to require you to go beyond the surface. That's why you need questions like, what concerns you the most about the next phase of your life? What would make you truly feel confident moving forward? What keeps you up at night when you're thinking about your finances? When you ask those questions and you're not rushing the answer, let it breathe. Because guess what? What's going to happen next is not just data, it's not just information, it's truth. You're going to hear things like, man, I watched my parents run out of money. That was terrible. I don't want to be a burden to my kids. I've worked my whole life and I don't want to mess this up. That's not data, that's a value signal. And when you hear that, your role then is to recognize that, acknowledge it, and then incorporate that into every recommendation moving forward. Because guess what? You're not just managing assets, you are putting together a plan with what matters most in their life. So let me be clear here. These are not soft questions, those aren't easy questions. Those are power questions. And you've got to be confident and patient and disciplined to ask those because that's what's going to unlock trust and clarity, emotional buy in, and more importantly, better long term decisions. And when you combine those with clear goals and deeply understood values, that's when your recommendation it'll stop feeling like just advice and start feeling like the right decision that they own. When you go deeper like that, your recommendations are going to improve. Your prospects will trust you more. Your close rate will increase. Your referrals will grow because yeah, you don't refer off of average experiences. Neither will your prospects and clients. That they're going to refer moments where they felt seen and heard and understood. If there are two advisors out there that have equal knowledge, the one who's actually asking better questions, that individual, that advisor is going to win every single time. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, all right, this all makes sense, but you know what? I just need some structure. I need a better way to implement this. I get it. You're not alone. Or even if you're like, you know what? I'm crushing it right now, but I can improve. I know I can always improve because, going deeper, you do need a repeatable process to do it. And that's exactly why we created for you the fact finding blueprint. So this is specifically designed for the advisor who wants to go from just data collection to deep discovery. And so what you're going to see inside this packet is a complete framework for structuring your whole discovery meeting, proven questions that will go beyond just the typical checklist, um, guidance on how to uncover values, not just goals, and a process that you can actually implement immediately with your next client. Because once again, at the end of the day, better questions they just don't happen by accident. You've got to they happen by design. So if you're ready to stop having repetitive surface level meetings, or you're ready to improve on whatever you're already doing great at, it just head out to our website, simply evolvewithgradient.com/ignite. Once again, evolvewithgradient.com/ignite. Request the fact finding blueprint. We want to make sure you're not just gathering information, but making better decisions for your clients and your business. And I want to leave you with this: your value isn't just in the answers that you give, but more importantly, in the questions that you ask. Because better questions lead to better understanding, and better understanding leads to better recommendations. So, to all the advisors out there that are listening right now, thank you so much. Thank you for helping your community to navigate some of life's biggest transitions. And as you are doing this well, that the impact goes far beyond finances. If you got value today, like, follow, subscribe to the podcast. We're everywhere: Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. Most importantly, share this episode with your firm because guess what? When you improve your process, you're going to elevate the entire client experience. This is Rob Romesburg. This is Unfiltered and Unstoppable. We'll see you next time.
The opinions herein may be from personal experience and may not necessarily be those of the Gradient Financial Group, its employees, or affiliates. Any results, topics, or outcomes are for informational purposes only. Financial professional use only. Rob Romesburg does not render tax, legal, or accounting advice and is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.